Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Today we'll be focusing on Syria and in particular the West's response to the violence there. My guest is Ronnie Brauman, who's an associate professor at Sciences Po here in Paris and a former president of the NGO Doctors Without Borders. Now, back in 2011, he was an outspoken critic of France's approach to Libya, clashing with influential intellectual Bernard-Henri Lévy, a staunch advocate of intervention. Henri Lévy is now advocating a similar approach to Syria, and he's once again urging caution. Ronnie Brauman, thanks very much for joining us. First of all, we seem to have reached this position now where the 5 permanent members of the Security Council are permanently divided between the Russians and the Chinese on one side and the US, UK and France on the other. Is this a situation which could have been avoided?
No, I don't think it could have been avoided. The tendency to militarily intervene, which is advocated by the 3 usual suspects, the United States, the UK and France, can't be accepted by the majority of the world. Let's remember that though there was a green light by the Security Council to intervene in Libya, there was a lot of opposition around the world. I mean, the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, the African Union, most African countries were opposed to this, and most people were opposed to a military intervention. So the balance of forces which allowed France and the UK and Qatar to intervene in Libya was a very specific, was a kind of momentum which can't be reproduced, I think.
Looking at the situation on the ground in Syria, we started off talking about protests, about revolution, then troubles, conflict. We're now talking about civil war. Has the situation not reached a point of no return where at some point one side has to win?
Well, I think one side will probably win, but the loser will be Syria and the Syrian people, definitely. The destruction, the suffering which are endured by Syria are absolutely appalling, are absolutely horrible. Now, could things have evolved differently? I don't know. I mean, the choice, the option for an increased violence is due primarily to the Syrian regime, of course, to the Assad clan. But the military response, the violent option by part of the Syrian opposition is also its own responsibility. So there is a kind of combination of both sides in an increasing violence, which is quite of a major concern. Now there is a point of no return, of course. One side has to win. We don't know yet which side is going to win. What is absolutely certain is that in the long term, this regime is just condemned to death. It won't survive long. But in human life, I mean, a matter of weeks or months or years matters a lot, of course, and that we don't know what is going to be the lifespan of this regime.
You were critical on France's approach to Libya. You're clearly critical on its approach to Syria as well. How else could the West have acted? Could they, for example, have exerted pressure on those who are helping the rebels, the likes of the Saudis and the Qataris, to adopt another approach?
No, I'm not really critical of France's or the Western approach to Syria these days, because I just can't see what else could be done. I think we can pressure our Western government and the Emirates and the Gulf political powers to be more present in terms of relief, in terms of helping out the host countries for the refugee issues. We can pressure our own government to be more vocal at the Security Council level, in various international organizations, or let's say on the international stage. Not sure that it would change much, but at least symbolically and politically that would count. But the general orientation of their political measures, I think, is the right one. A military intervention, which would be an alternative option, would cause more harm than good. So if you leave aside a military option, well, you have to focus on, well, diplomacy, relief, covert assistance, which is on the way, of course, through weapons which are shipped through the border to the rebellion, through training camps which have been established in various parts, in various areas around the country, and even in Europe, if my information is right. So, well, what else can be done? I think it's up to the Syrians to settle this problem, to come to a solution. It's not up to the foreigners.
And Syria, of course, is at the crossroads of many kind of axes of power within the region and further afield. What are your fears about the potential impact on the region?
Well, I must say that my main fear at this present moment is that a combination of hawks, Syrian hawks, Israeli hawks, and American hawks lead to a regional confrontation through a military intervention, an Israeli military intervention in Iran, which seems to be at the top of the agenda now in Israel. So this is something we could see in the coming weeks, and which, of course, would be a windfall, would be a marvelous opportunity for Bashar al-Assad to present himself as an anti-imperialist, resistant, and get back to his father's position as one of the voices of resistance against Western imperialism. So that would be an absolute disaster, I think.
Okay, we talked at the top a little bit about Libya. You were critical of France's approach there. Nevertheless, the situation in Libya at the moment, not ideal, but people have at least got rid of an autocratic government. They've started to choose their own leaders.
Yes, and this is a betterment. My question is that could this have been achieved by other ways? My main criticism against the military intervention, the foreign intervention in Libya, is that it was a war of. It was the first option. Every proposition of mediation, of transaction, of negotiation has been just wiped out, has just been brushed aside to favor the military option, which was decided just only a few days after the first demonstrations in Benghazi. And then there was a war of propaganda with the idea that there was an air attacks against peaceful demonstrators in Tripoli, which was a fake, which was just an invention. Again, the mercenaries with Viagra, who were about to rape all the women there, another fake, etc. So there was a kind of propaganda build-up to lead to the war, and that was the first option. That was my main criticism. Now, if you think in terms of moral economy of human lives, well, you can ask yourself, was it a success or not? Because according to the TNC, the Transition National Council, 45,000 people died during this war. 45,000 people. That's a lot of people, much more than in Syria, in much less time, in a much less populated country. So it's a very high rate of mortality.
Okay, let's move back to Syria now and talk a little bit more about the humanitarian situation. There are obviously 200,000 or perhaps many more have already fled the country. We're talking about hundreds of thousands internally displaced. Talking about those outside the country, first of all, Turkey, for example, is saying it's reaching the point where it can't cope. What can be done to give more help to those who are fleeing the violence in Syria?
Well, provide more resources, financial resources primarily, because in terms of human resources, Turkey can cope, and with the backing of some NGOs and the UN agencies, I think from this point of view, Turkey can cope, but of course they want to raise the stakes in order to get more funds, to get more support, because they're on the front line and they need to be backed. Otherwise, bad things could happen. We haven't reached a breaking point now. There are about 80,000 refugees. The Turks have declared that 100,000 would be the breaking point, but they have added straight away that, well, would be one by one. It would be, I mean, it's not a very precise deadline, so that gives some flexibility. But of course, I mean, flows of refugees can't be the answer to the situation. So I think that the rebellion has also to take responsibility for the established safe areas inside the country is one option. Bearing in mind that concentration of people can be an ideal target for the repression forces for the Syrian army.
OK, Ronnie Brown, that's all we have time for. Thanks very much for joining us, and thanks very much to you for watching this edition of the France 24 interview. Do join us again soon.